Hey everybody, it's Aldo Gandhi, and I just want to let you know really quickly that our swag shop is reopened. DeepDishTees.com is where you go, and that's tees with T-E-E-S. Clever name, guys. They're the new home of our merchandise. You can get t-shirts, you can get caps, you can get coffee mugs, you can get hoodies, you can get all sorts of good stuff, and you'll help out the barroom with the purchase. So head over to DeepDishTees.com.
Going to Wrigley Field was a huge, unforgettable deal that impacted my life.
Well, I think the Cubs winning based upon the gap was one of the biggest championships that have happened in any American sport in a really long time.
The first day that they introduced me, I said, baseball matters on the north side of Chicago. It's I love baseball, and I love fan bases where it's important.
Well, I always hated the idea of the Cubs as lovable losers because I don't think there's anything lovable about putting an inferior product in front of baseball fans.
It would be the highlight of my career to see that happen and to get a chance to call it. And it didn't disappoint.
I auditioned for the new kid. His name was Billy Crystal. I don't know whatever happened to him. But I'm on the Chad and Ryan show.
Welcome to Friendly Confines, Extra Innings with Chad Gordon and Ryan Lieber.
What's going on, Rhino? How are you doing?
Hey, everybody. How
Monday.
you doing, Chad? Happy Monday.
It's good to be here. You know, we're going long form on the Mondays, which I'm enjoying this because we have a chance to actually talk about what is going on. And as I was putting the rundown together, I was feeling a little excited, more about the future. Actually, I've got some really exciting news about this week's future as it relates to Cubs. But before we get into that thing, how you doing?
I'm doing good. We are just about wrapping up the season. What do we got? 2 more weeks here, and then
12 games.
We're
4 series
to Fan Appreciation Week, which we're so used to with this team over the years. So certainly it's not the season that we had predicted or hoped for. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because I think if
you predicted this.
I did.
You predicted my win total. My win total bet in Vegas preseason showed that I did not anticipate this, and as I've shared with Aldo, we need to do the reverse action podcast. I still think maybe we put our energy into that. I didn't lose big, but let's just say my over-under on wins was a little optimistic.
The Chad Gordon disadvantage continues.
The disadvantage. Hey, can I tell you something really fun? Can I tell you something really fun? So I'm looking at Facebook, and I love the look back. And 12 years ago today. So if you're watching this right now, you're a real one. You're a Cubs fan. You're watching it because you still care, still love what we're talking about. We're bringing timely, topical stuff, great guests. You're still listening. But 12 years ago today, if this Facebook post means anything to you, then you are a real one. 12 years ago today, I wrote "Good riddance, Milton Bradley." So if you know what that means and that hits you and you're like, thank God they got rid of him 12 years ago, then you've been with us for a long time. And if you're like, I don't know what that is, then I would wager to say you're probably newer to the game, which is great. There's room for you here, but you've been very spoiled over the last 6 years. And this Fan Appreciation Week or so is kind of how it is from time to time.
It absolutely is. I would say so as well. And this is certainly a time where, like you said, we reflect and we look forward to the future. So where should we start tonight?
I'm going to kick it off right here. We're going to start off in the first inning. And Ryan, you said it a second ago. We've just got a couple weeks to go. I believe 12 games. We've got 4 series. We've got the quick one against the Twins. We've got a 4-game set against the Cardinals. I'm going to be there for 2 of those. Pretty stoked about that. My first ever day-night doubleheader in my fandom. And then you've got 3 games against the Pirates and then 3 more against the Cardinals. Ryan, what do you want to see here in the first inning? What do you want to see over the next 2 weeks in these 12 games against those 3 different opponents?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if wins or losses really make a difference at this point. I'm not one to sit here and say, I know we talked about this last week. Sure, it would be great if the Cubs wanted to play spoiler against, the St. Louis Cardinals and try to ruin their playoff chances. I mean, right now the Cardinals are the hottest team in baseball, winning 9 of 10. But I just think at the end of the day, you want to see progress. And whether that is just seeing guys kind of, coming into their own to end the season on a high note is fine by me. You kind of want to see some, I guess some depth in the pitching staff as far as reaching some goals. The bullpen maybe looking a little better, but I don't think wins or losses at this point, Chad, is something that I care about. Right? Like, is it better just to finish up with I don't know, a 79 and 83 record for the sake of just making it look a little better? Or does it really matter at this point if they have 78 wins or 67 wins? So for my money, I think you just kind of want to see improvement all the way around, and you want to see something where there's a little bit of life at the end of the season that gets you going in 2022 saying, okay, that's something we can build on. That's something I can look forward to. What about yourself?
It's not about improvement for me. It's about heart. It's about seeing in these games, and I haven't seen this in these games, even when this team was having consecutive multiple monster double-digit losing streaks, one with the core group and then one with this new group. I just want to see heart. I want to make sure that right to the very last game, they're out there battling. And I know they are, and we know they are. There's some names that we never knew about, when we never imagined that it would get this bad and they would sell off the entire team for all those trades. But I just want to see some heart. I'm not sure what we're going to see from a pitching perspective, what you're going to do now. It's, the recent situation like Dylan Maples. There's a guy that a lot of people had as a potential starter in the future of the club. He's been outrighted. He's gone. He's off the team. They needed a spot for him on the 40-man. So we're in a situation right now where the Cubs front office is seeing what they have in a lot of cases, seeing the heart that they have in a lot of cases, and they're doing the math in their head about what kind of poker hand they're holding and what could be possible going into the next season. But for me, as I said, I'm going to be there on Friday. I'm going to see, unfortunately, just a 7-inning day game and a 7-inning night game. But I'm going to be there. I'm going to be at Wrigley Field. It's going to be a Friday afternoon game in September, which is a beautiful thing, and a Friday night game, which is a rarity. I'm still a fan, still enjoying it. And season's coming to a close. And just so you know, Rhino, I just yesterday got my invoice for spring training tickets in Mesa. So it's not like the business office is taking any time off. I know that.
David Harmon, who's watching tonight, thank you, David, just says the Cubs need to finish out the season with a positive mindset and pick it up stronger next season. Yeah, he's absolutely right. Kind of what you were touching on as well, Chad. So hopefully, like we said, something to build on into next season. Well, something to definitely build on into next season, Chad, as we start the second inning. How about Patrick Wisdom, who now has set a Cubs rookie record for most home runs in a season, 27. Chad, I guess the question I have for you is Patrick Wisdom, in your opinion, the rookie of the year in the National League with the numbers he has put up this year, or does it go to somebody else? What do you think about that?
It's not going to go. I think he might be able to sneak in, just come from the market size of a number 3 or a number 4 pick, but he's not my pick for rookie of the year. I think a couple pitchers are going to have that claim to fame. I wish that Patrick had an opportunity to see what he could have done over the course of 162 games. I mean, where would his home run totals be? It's a great stat. Only 5 Major League Baseball players have hit at least 27 home runs in a season with 355 plate appearances or less. So basically, that's just showing that with a very few amount of opportunities, a lot of home runs. He's averaging a breakneck pace. So it's him. It's Glenn Allen Hill, who had 27 in 2000, Giancarlo Stanton, 27 in 2015, Mike Zunino, who has 28 this year, and McGuire, who had 32 in 2000. And a couple of those might have been aided by some chemicals. Not saying anything about Mark McGuire. But what I love about Patrick Wisdom is there's a guy that he owns the Cubs rookie record for home runs. I mean, he has more rookie home runs than Bryant, who just set that just a few years ago in 15. He has more than Ernie Banks. He's a guy that conceivably, if he had been able to play a whole year, be in the 40s, which that means he'd be one of the league leaders. And so it makes you think about, what do we do about the Patrick Wisdom situation? Does he get a full ride? I think he does. He's slotted in there at third unless they bring Chris back. But he has the versatility to play a corner spot. He has the versatility to play the infield corner spots. The only issue with Patrick, which is what you're going to have with these feast or famine sort of guys, is, and especially over the last couple of weeks, is his strikeout totals are nearing 40-45%. So you're going to see something incredible like him nearly taking the roof off in Milwaukee, or you're going to see a big swing and a hack and a miss.
Yeah. And listen, I think he's got a shot. He's probably on the cusp. There's no one really in the National League that's absolutely, a runaway winner. Jonathan India with the Reds has had a nice year. He's, and Trevor Rogers has had a decent year with the Marlins. You were talking about, with a pitcher. But I think the biggest problem with Wisdom, as you said, is he's hitting 237 right now. And I don't think that is going to win over votes. The power's there. I think this is a guy you give at least an opportunity to, as you said, next year, because in only 321, plate appearances, he's got 27 homers. This is a guy who I think has, 40 plus home runs written all over him if he's got enough at bats. I think it's just a matter of, is this guy going to be able to hit the ball good enough? Are we looking at a guy that's going to be hitting in the 230s, 240s? Is that good enough for an everyday third baseman? I don't know about that. It's
so the front office, as we move on to the – oh, sorry, Ryan.
No, I was just saying it's got that Kyle Schwarber sort of feel to it. So I just wonder if ultimately he's going to have longevity as a player who's going to be able to, stick around long enough for this ball club for the foreseeable future if he's not able to hit over.
And you raise a good point. I'm 29 years old, right. So, he's an older guy. I love seeing the grief. He did get quite a bit of at-bats. I have to find the year, but there was one year he got dozens and dozens and dozens of at-bats, maybe like 4 dozen for the Cardinals. So I frankly don't understand what the Rookie of the Year criteria is. What makes you a rookie? Because this is not his first time. But speaking of frankly, let's move on to the third inning. And Frank the Franchise Schwindel, this guy has come out of seemingly nowhere. If you look at his track record, everywhere he was in all of the different franchises, 3 franchises, he was blocked at first, blocked by the A's at first. He was blocked by the Tigers and Miguel Cabrera at first. But here's a guy that is putting up actual MVP-like numbers. If he could have had a season to be on this pace, who knows if pitching would have adjusted. But when you think about Frank Schwindel, you think about first base for the Chicago Cubs. It's a no-brainer, right? He's coming back, right? I mean, Anthony Rizzo is not coming back. Frank's the guy, right?
Well, that's there lies the bigger question, right, Chad? Like that's the question. It's not if Frank Schwindel is coming back. We know he's coming back. It's that we have now guaranteed that Anthony Rizzo is not coming back because Frank Schwindel is now the franchise of this baseball team. As you said, I mean, the guy just continues to put up incredible numbers, 340 batting average, 14 home runs. Listen, here's another guy who, potentially could be up for Rookie of the Year, right? I mean, he's only got 191 at-bats. Maybe next year he qualifies as a rookie. But this is another guy who I think next year you got to give this guy the opportunity to shine. And I know I said this on our show last week. Is this one of those situations where maybe the major leagues has not caught up to him and knows exactly how to pitch to him? Or is this guy for real? And this is somebody that the Cubs need to kind of build their team around and say, okay, we got somebody who we think could be, a cornerstone for this baseball team. So I love this guy as a player. It's a shame that he's getting overshadowed in the sense that he doesn't play for a very good baseball team. But I'd like to think next year we're going to see more of him. And yeah, that answers the question, Chad, for all those that were wondering, well, maybe Anthony Rizzo comes back and signs with the Cubs. I think that now we know that's not happening unless there's another position Frank Schwindel can play. Anthony Rizzo is not going to be a part of this franchise next season.
It seems very unlikely. And one of the positives you can take from this, and you could even add in Patrick Wisdom, if you say, you know what, they're going to be on the corners in the infield, well, that gives a tremendous amount of flexibility for the front office to make the moves they need to make if they're going to bring in some sort of maybe shortstop centerpiece, or even try to bring back a Chris Bryant and say, Chris, likelihood we need you in the outfield. But it really provides a lot of opportunity. When you talk about the franchise, since August 5th, he leads the league in multi-hit games. He's first in batting average, and I may be off because of the Sunday games, but batting nearly 370. He's first in hits with over 55. He's tied for fourth in home runs. He's tied for third in RBIs, and he's tied for third in extra base hits. This is a production machine. And so he's not striking out a ton. He's putting good wood on the ball. He's barreling seemingly everything. And it kind of begs the question, and this is a deeper conversation than here just in the third inning, but good God, how many other Frank Swindells are toiling around in the minors and never getting a chance because they're blocked by people? Here's the guy that is making the absolute most of his opportunity. And I can't say I'm unhappy about the thought of him starting off next year in Mesa and getting that first base job. He's certainly done what he can to earn it here. And teams that are playing the Cubs right now certainly are trying to get him out, but nobody's figured it out as of yet. So it's going to be interesting to see if some regression does happen. But from what I see, this is a hungry guy that has basically said, look at me. I've been here all along. I'm your guy. And I think in 2022, we're going to see if he has the opportunity to be the guy, because right now he is the leader on this team in just about every way.
All right, so let's move on now to the fourth inning now, Chad. And obviously it's been a rocky year for one pitcher in particular, and that being one Kyle Hendricks. The record is 14-6, but that ERA is very unlike Kyle Hendricks at this point, with a 4.81, nearly a 5 ERA. He had a stretch, though, where he was pitching unbelievable, but certainly it has been a very difficult go for him this season. Is it fair to say at this point, Chad, that Kyle Hendricks is no longer the ace of this baseball team, and maybe his seasons looking back are the best that we've seen, and that this is maybe the apex of Kyle Hendricks? Or are we just looking at an outlier of a season and he should be back to what we expect next season?
You know what? We're going to see him in the last 3 starts of this season. We're going to see him finish out this string. And let's be honest, Kyle Hendricks was never the low ERA guy. So to say that he's in the 4s as if that's a horrible thing when league averages is in the 3s, high 3s. What Kyle brings to the table is workmanship. He is about good pace of play. He's about getting in there and letting the defense do their job. He's about keeping it close. Now, granted, he had a 7-0 lead up in Milwaukee, and he gave up 7, didn't even get out of the 4th inning. But there is an aspect to Kyle Hendricks right now is I think he's a much better team. Kyle Hendricks with the Dodgers would be a lot better than what we're seeing with Kyle Hendricks with the Cubs, because he does rely on a lot of run support, and he relies on a big, solid defense that gets it done. So he's a bargain. And if he comes out into next year and he's your number 3, because going into this year, he was your number 1, number 2. If he's as bad as the number 3 for the future Cubs team, and he's the veteran presence, I'm going to be okay with that. What do you think?
I think that, Kyle is a very good pitcher, but I don't know if Kyle Hendricks is a guy you can look at and say he's an ace in Major League Baseball. I think the way that aces are today, Chad, the Greg Maddux type pitchers, I don't think they really exist anymore to be an ace sort of pitcher, right? You got to have the Jacob deGroms, the Max Scherzers, the Walker Buehlers, the Garrett Coles. Those are the guys that are the ace pitchers, guys who are blowing the ball by everybody at 100+ miles per hour, guys who are striking out 300, batters a year. That's where the game is now kind of trending to. And unfortunately, not to say Kyle Hendricks can't play in this league, because he certainly can, but I don't look at Kyle Hendricks as a guy who can be a number 1, a guy who can shut down another team and you're like, hey, this is our guy that we're going to go to. I think until the Cubs have somebody like that, they did have somebody like that, once when John Lester was in his prime, when Arrieta was in his prime, we saw that sort of pitcher that was dominant. Until the Cubs get that again, they had Hugh Darvish. Until the Cubs get that again, they don't have an ace right now. And while Kyle Hendricks, I think, as you said, is a good 2 or 3, I just don't think he's a number 1 guy.
No, I appreciate that. And it does raise a question, and we're not going to get into an inning, but now retrospectively looking at that Yu Darvish trade, was it a bad deal? because Yu Darvish has been an absolute non-factor for the Padres, who are reeling. I think they've lost something like 23 out of their last 35 games, and have just and as you saw in the dugout, the implosion between Tatis and Machado. But Yu Darvish has been completely ineffective, and he's 35 plus now. So you got to wonder if maybe the Cubs front office knew what they were doing there, getting out of his contract, getting out from underneath the contract to a willing buyer. And we won't know from the prospects because those guys are so young. But yeah, pitching's changed, Rano. You're right. Pitching's changed, and the complete game overpowering from start to finish pitching, or the workmanship, craftsmanship guy. It's all about getting to that third time through the order and moving into your bullpen. And we're seeing Kyle Hendricks. I think it's a falter a little bit, but I still like him on this lineup going into next year. Now, here's another thing to think about: lineup going into next year. If Frank Schwindel is on the lineup at first base, if Patrick Wisdom is over there at third base, and let's say Chris Bryant's super happy moving on to San Francisco, which everybody thinks that's the case, do you bring back Javi Baez? And the reason I asked that, we've asked that before, I don't think we're going to get Javi Baez at a discount anymore. He has been on an absolute tear since the thumbs down, thumbs up situation, and he has maybe potentially played himself into an extra $50 to $70 million by what he's showing under the brightest lights and keeping a very poor Mets team still within reach of the wild card run. What do you think? Is Javi, has he played himself into a mega blockbuster deal with the likes of the other big five in the shortstop race?
Chad, it's pretty amazing as we saw how hard and how difficult Javi Baez's start to the season was. And he has absolutely been lights out in these past few weeks, as you said. And if you look collectively between Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, and Javi Baez, in my opinion, overall, Javi Baez is having the best season of the three. He's, yes, he's hitting 264, which, he's just a shade below where Chris Bryant's hitting. He's got 31 home runs, many more home runs than Bryant or Rizzo has. And he's got 84 RBIs, more RBIs than both of those guys. Javi Baez is having himself an incredible year. And to your point, yes, he is probably going to make a lot more money than maybe some people had anticipated. And maybe, just maybe, the deep pockets of the New York Mets, and you've said it before, if Steve Cohen can go out and maybe lure Theo Epstein to be the team president, we know how Theo feels about Javi and the type of player that he is. Maybe they're just willing to say, hey, we're going to put you at second base and you're going to be our second baseman moving forward. And you're going to, be right playing next to Francisco Lindor. So if the Cubs are going to try and get Javi, which, hey, there's no reason why they can't, right? I mean, they're going to have the money to do it. I still think there's a good possibility that could happen because that's the guy who I think of the three is most willing to come back at this point, and is probably the most signable at this point as well for what you're getting back from a value. I don't think fans would be as excited if, let's just hypothetically say, Anthony Rizzo came back, right? He's on the tail end of his career. I think fans would be excited for Chris Bryant, but I just don't think Chris Bryant is going to be affordable in the respect that the Cubs are willing to put that money forward, and I don't think Bryant wants to come back. I think Javi would consider coming back, and I think Javi would not necessarily take a discount, but I think the Cubs would be willing to pay what Javi wants because it would be significantly less than what Chris Bryant is offering. And I would welcome Javi Baez back and just be curious to see if the Mets are willing, or another team for that matter, are willing to offer more. What about you?
Chris Bryant does not want to come back to Chicago. Chris Bryant wants to get paid. Chris Bryant is a generational talent, and he wants to get paid. And he is not going to take a discount to come put on a Cubs uniform still when he's already got a statue lined up when he retires. And it'll probably be a statue like the Cardinals did where they have like 3 or 4 guys in one statue. He's made his mark in Chicago. He's going to get paid. What I've shared with you about Javi Baez is he's the most marketable guy on this team that we've had in this entire last decade, period. No one comes close. Nobody lines up 5 blocks in advance for Javi Baez for Anthony Rizzo bobblehead day. They do it for Javi Baez. Nobody chants anybody's last name in a key situation except for Javi Baez. Javi Baez is a crowd pleaser. Javi Baez is every kid out there, young person, young adult's favorite player for this Cubs team in this run, period. There's in terms of value, he has the most value. But here's the cool thing. He actually has value. You take Simeon out of the equation, Toronto, and you take Trevor Story out of the equation, and Javi Baez has the third best WAR among all of the top 5 shortstops that are hitting free agency, along with Seager and Correa. So he is actually having arguably the second best season with all the distractions, with the trade, with the early struggles in the Mets, his second best season of his career. And so he is he's played himself in a lot more value. I don't think your premise of no matter how deep those pockets are, the Mets being able to make a run and put $700, $800 million in the center of a lineup, I don't see that happening, because they're going to need many, many more pieces and second bases where you can go a little bit cheaper. It's kind of like your budget guy on the infield. It's a nice story to be able to play with his best friend. But I think Javi Baez is a guy that, how would the lights of LA shine for Javi? I mean, that could be something if the Dodgers don't bring Seager back. But the Cubs would not struggle by bringing him back with something to prove. And I mean, think about it. This is the guy that when he was in high school got the Major League Baseball logo right here on the back of his neck because he knew he was going to be the guy. He ain't done yet. He's not going to rest on his laurels. He wants to be more and be a bigger part of a franchise. Keep in mind, he was not a team leader in 15 and 16. He was the young guy still figuring it out when this team won it all. So he still has to have the opportunity where he can be the leader with the energy and bring a team together. We're seeing the effects of a young kid who gets a big contract in Tatis in San Diego, who has not shown the leadership skills by everything you're seeing in the paper with the big dust up in the dugout. But Javi Baez right now, if he was the one guy to come back, I told you I want Bryant back because I think he's going to have the most long-term value, and I love his flexibility. But if Javi is in the infield next to Frank Swindell and Patrick Wisdom and Nico Horner, it's not a bad infield. I could go there. There's power in that lineup. And in today's Major League Baseball, you got to score a lot of runs to win games.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, it's at least somebody that you can market this team next year with. You got to have somebody. As much as we love Frank Schwindel, you're not going to market this team around Frank Schwindel. You can market this team around bringing somebody like Javi Baez back. All right, so let's move on to the 6th inning, Chad. And David Ross, of course, you can arguably say has maybe faced two of the most difficult years ever as a manager of the Chicago Cubs. I mean, we're going back way. I'm sure we can find, guys here and there. There's certainly plenty of guys that we could, maybe Rick Renteria's up there. Dale Swain might be up there. But Rossi certainly had his work cut out for him these first 2 years, dealing with a pandemic and then now dealing with arguably, the biggest fire sale of all time in the history of this franchise. Not even arguably, it was. So how do you, I guess, evaluate the first 2 years of David Ross and trying to figure out if he is ultimately the right person for this job? Because we all assume he will be back next year. But at what point do you sit there and say, okay, now we have to sit here and say, when is it the time to decide whether David Ross is the right guy or is not the right guy? Even though next year we assume he will be back, how do you evaluate the job that Rossi has done so far for the first 2 seasons?
David Ross has probably the softest landing, the longest runway of any manager right now, because you cannot look at the struggles last year with COVID. You throw that out the window. You can't look at what happened this year and put any blame in these 2 seasons on David Ross. He has the opportunity to kind of create what he needs to create. I've got a crazy dark horse pick. Last week you said, who is Jed going to bring in as his general manager? Well, we just heard in the last day or so that David Ross wants to spend a lot more time in player development and wants to get into kind of the scouting game. Who's to say maybe David Ross not only doesn't get let go, which he won't, maybe he's head coach and assistant general manager to make, so Theo can have a shorter leash between him and his manager. You've heard it here first. It's probably not going to happen, but if it does happen, I was the first person to say that. Mark Silverman hasn't made that prediction, but I am. David Ross has got to show us something next year, because he is going to have the opportunity to put a group of young talent out there who have a chance to overachieve, much like that 2015 team where nobody saw that really coming, even though they did start investing with Lester and others. He has an opportunity to create this team in his own image. I think he struggled to do that when you had Rizzo and you had Hayward and you had Bryant and you had all these guys that have been there, done it, even with him. So there's all these individuals. And I think David Ross has an opportunity, like where Joe Madden does a much better job of kind of shaping younger talent. So I think next year is going to be his make or break year. I don't think there's any pressure on him at all. I don't think anybody could look at the Cubs struggles down the stretch in 19 and think, oh, well, that would have been different with or without David Ross. But yeah, 20 and this year, there's no issue. So it's not a thumbs up or it's not a thumbs down. I think a comedy of errors led to where we are right now. And also, sad to say, things end. And as they said on Cocktail, Coughlin's Law, everything ends badly, Ryan. Otherwise, it wouldn't end. And that's what this run was. It ended badly. It had to end.
It had to end, Chad. And, certainly, as you said, David Ross, popular player. Do we know if he's a good manager? I don't know if we do, because unfortunately he hasn't really had the horses to show everybody what ultimately he can do with a good roster. So I hope that he's back next year. Look, in an age where we see the manager doesn't really make much of a difference when it comes to, really managing the game, although Dusty Baker and Tony La Russa, two candidates for manager of the year this year. You call them old school. But, Dusty's always been kind of a player manager and kind of creating that, cohesiveness in the locker room. La Russa's really the last of the last to kind of really just, manage as they used to back in the day. Terry Francona, I would suppose, as well. I like David Ross. He's easy to like. He's somebody who understands, the game. I'd like to see him stick around as long as possible. But, again, in the era we live in where managers are pretty disposable, I'm just curious how much longer he's going to be interested in managing this team. Or is he going to enjoy going back up to the booth where he's not going to get, scrutinized and he has a cushy job and he can hang out with his actress girlfriend much more often, for that matter?
It's a great question. I think David Ross wants to be that grizzled manager in 20 years' time, and the question is, will he have the opportunity through many different ups and downs, which this Cubs franchise is seemingly going to be a part of? Well, that wraps up our sixth inning. I wanted to tease this. I meant to tease this before. We have a Cubs Cardinal ticket giveaway, and you got to be on Twitter for this. I'm going to mention it after we go into our seventh inning stretch. So, Ryan, why don't you throw us to break?
Well, we're actually we're gonna do something different, Chad. We're not gonna go to break this time. We're gonna go right into the seventh inning this week, because I know we're coming up short on a little bit of time. So we're gonna continue the seventh inning.
Am I missing the producer notes, or it just? Oh, I see it now. I see it now. There are producer notes.
So no worries. So we're gonna go into the seventh inning, and of course, this week we have our guest. It is Mark Carman from Fansided and NBC Sports Chicago and WGN Radio. He was kind enough to join us. And it's interesting, Chad, because we talked about Javi Baez, but he seems to look at another guy who the Cubs could be potentially interested in this offseason. And here's what he had to say. And here's a little bit of our interview with Mark Carman.
I think they are going to be aggressive. I think you'll hear a lot of the Cubs and Carlos Correa in the offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cubs were at the top of the market, and perhaps he would even choose to play in Chicago, assuming the Astros aren't right there. And that's an interesting guy, considering his history and the Astros history as far as winning World Series and not doing things the right way. But incredibly talented ball player, 27 years old, shortstop, certainly someone that Cubs fans, I think, could wrap their arms around and be excited about. I think.
So there's Mark Carman. Yeah. Of course, you can hear more of his interview in our audio version that we're going to be releasing this week. So as we move on to the eighth inning here, Chad, I guess the question is now, would you rather have somebody like Javi Baez Or would you rather have somebody like Carlos Correa from the Houston Astros? Does it matter who the Cubs would get in that situation? What do you think about that?
Yeah, here's the for and against. You bring back Javi. You hope you can get him on a discount. You think that, he's not, Javi's not going to get Tatis money. He probably won't get Carlos money. I really don't think that. So you'll get him at a little bit less. So if you can bring Javi back, you're saving some money. And yes, woe is me for the ownership, but you do need to stay underneath that luxury tax depending on what happens in the negotiations between the players and the owners. So the pros for Javi coming back is you think that he's going to be a little bit more affordable, but I still think he's 250 and up. I really do think he's going to be 250 and up. For Carlos, here's an opportunity to make a clean break. Here's an opportunity to bring a guy in that is at the top of his game. He's a guy that's performed the best at the highest level. And also the Astros have had much more sustained success than the Cubs have had. And he's also raised a World Series trophy and been to a couple World Series. And there is a tarnish on that. Maybe he wants a break. Maybe he wants to get somewhere and have a new market and a new fan base wear his jersey. So I think, the which one I'd rather have, I kind of like the clean break situation, but I think it's going to cost the Cubs front office.
Listen, here's the simple answer. Carlos Correa is a great player. He's a wonderful shortstop. He, as you said, won a World Series. Here's the thing. You want the guy who the fans are going to look at and go, kind of cheated to get a World Series? Or do you want the guy who you already are in love with, who you already have the relationship with, who you're already, as you had said earlier, the one that the fans chant his name every time he is at bat? It is going to be a wash as far as money goes. I think Correa is probably going to set the market. I would venture to think he would. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a pretty close contract when it comes to whoever is going to sign the deal. And as far as I'm concerned, I go for Javi first. And Javi's the guy I would go for. Correa is a great player. And if they end up with Correa, that's fine too. But I personally think Javi's the one that you can at least, fans would get more excited about bringing back Javi Baez than they would if you brought in Carlos Correa, even though those numbers are basically the same.
Exactly. And before I jump to the ninth inning, two things. One, we're both wrong. The biggest, most exciting news that the Cubs are going to do in the front office, and I mentioned this 3 months ago before anybody, they're going to sign Nick Castellanos, and that is going to sell a lot of jerseys and a lot of tickets. You wait and see. This team is going to overpay for Nick, and they're going to basically tell the Cubs fans, you asked for it, and when he falters because of age and all those things, it's going to be, the Cubs are like, well, at least I have his jersey. He's one of my favorite guys. Before the ninth inning, really quickly, go to Twitter. Go to Cubs Confines. Right there. You see it on right there right now. At the very top, post it at the very top, an opportunity. You got to follow, you got to like, and you got to tag a friend that you would take. We have 2 free bleacher tickets to this coming Saturday's Cubs-Cardinals series. Ryan didn't even know anything about this. 2 free tickets to Cubs Cardinals on me because we appreciate you as a listener. Very simple, very easy. Right now, you have about a 1 in 40 chance to win, so it's really good. Let's move on to the ninth inning. Don't forget, go to Twitter, Cubs Confines. Zoom it back. This is recorded. You could go back and see if you forgot what it is. And I love this. Tankapalooza. Let's look at the ratings right now, Ryan. We've got about 2 minutes before we're going to wrap up this show so we can get into the White Sox incredible coverage of a really better team than the Cubs, but we love what we're doing here on the Friendly Confines. Tankapalooza. Right now, the Cubs, if the season ended today, are picking 8th in next year's draft, and we can pull up the numbers right now. I think Aldo has it on the ready. But this team, 2 of the teams this team's playing in, 5 of the games are actually ahead of the Cubs. Minnesota's right there at 7, and look at Pittsburgh, probably not in reach, but potentially look there at 4th. I think the best the Cubs could do really is 5th. What would you rather have? We talked about this before, Ryan. Would you rather just forget about this year, because we're all going to forget about it in 2 weeks, and have the 5th pick of this next year's draft and potentially getting a franchise pitcher? Or would you rather kick the crap out of the Cardinals, knock them out of the playoff race? Because right now they are the second wild card team between after the Dodgers. What would you rather have? A great draft pick on a forgettable year, or kick the crap out of the Cardinals and knock them so far out of the playoff race they won't know what hit them?
I feel like I know what you're going to answer, Chad. So I'm going to go with the opposite, because this is the correct answer. Who cares if you kick the crap out of the Cardinals? because the Cardinals are going to get the crap kicked out of them in the postseason if they make it. Get the pick. That at the end of the day is more important, because if you get the pick, Chad, then you can consistently kick the crap out of the Cardinals year in and year out with a pitcher or a franchise player that will help your team for years to come, that will beat the living daylights out of the St. Louis Cardinals. So I am more concerned with this draft and getting a big pick and getting a big player, as opposed to just ruining the Cardinals season. Nobody will even remember 5 years from now. Nobody will care, because the Cardinals are going to lose in the 1-game playoff series against, the Dodgers or the Giants, whoever they end up playing in that first round game. So it doesn't even matter at this point. So yes, get the pick, Chad. That's all that matters. And what are you going to say? Are you going to say you ruined the Cardinals season just because
baseball is so fun? Baseball's so fun. On September 7th, the Cardinals had a 2.8% chance of making the playoffs, and now they're in. So I think, the Cardinals have to do they've got to finish the job. And there's a lot of other teams, the Phillies, the Padres, who could obviously turn it back on. There's other factors at play. When the Cubs went on that winning streak a couple weeks ago, non-Cub fans, like, hey, way to go, the Cubs are winning. I'm like, I know, I don't want them to. It doesn't matter, everybody. Let's see the heart of this team, as we said earlier on. Let's enjoy some baseball, and let's reset this, and let's bring some new people to the table. So yes, I'm with you. Yes, if we have the opportunity at the 5th pick and we can still knock the Cardinals out, because keep in mind, we play the last 3 games of the season against the Cardinals. We could be spoilers just in 1 game. I like our chances there. But also, the Cardinals have 7 games against us, and we're not very good. So we're going to maybe help their playoff chances as we go. But that, you know what? Fun show. You want to bring us home, Ryan?
Yeah, real quick. Coach Ram 23, thanks for watching tonight. They shouldn't need high draft picks to be a successful organization. Sure, you can win with free agency, but the draft is very important as well. Just remember that. All right, that is going to wrap things up for this edition of the Friendly Confines. Our thanks to Mark Carman. For Chad, I'm Ryan. We'll talk to you next week, everybody. Have a good one.
See you at the ballpark, everybody. See you Friday. If you're coming out, hit me up on Twitter. I'll be in the bleachers Friday night and in the Catalina Club during the day. Day-night doubleheader.